Hey traders, my morning video running a little bit later than yesterday, but just some things that I'm looking for here. So far this morning, I think that they're trying to hold prices here, trying to decide whether or not to uh, pop up above the midline on this well-established downtrend since the beginning of this market. I'm still leaning more to the upside going into the open today, so just keep that in mind going forward on the ES futures. Um we do have some selling pressure this morning, but it is very, very light volume. And every time I start seeing light volume, I get concerned that the bears do not have good footing to push prices lower because we are trying to rebound a little bit. So it's anybody's guess what's going on here. So far this week on the ES futures, we have established a price point slightly lower than what we're currently marking. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say that we're going to have a bullish breakout here, but I do think, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, that we are going to tag, at the very least, try to tag uh, this midline going into today's session. And it would be nice if right here at the beginning of the day we came up there and we were try to base out up here. This represents last week's value point of control. This is where most of the volume hit last week, and so that would be a really bullish sign to finish the week off with. But this is the beginning of a new month, so we'll see what happens with the price and the market action. But the lack of downside selling pressure in the face of horrible news, that makes me tend to lean to the bullish side going into today's session. Okay, and then a little bit better rundown here on the market internals. We were closing on some they were trying to get into the markets on the ticks, and we had fairly constructive internals yesterday on the Qs. So, each day is different, of course, but we'll just keep a really close eye on what's going on here in this market. Let me. Okay, so far this morning on the Qs, we have a 821 cross MA scenario setting up this morning on our Qs into this morning session. So something to keep on watch going into the session. And if you go on our lower time frames here, let's see here. We'll start here. And basically, we're trading right below last week's volume point of control. Okay, but so far this week, value was accepted way up here at the top of the range. Now we're getting really close for it to migrate lower, and today we are likely to see it migrating lower. But it is something to keep in mind. We are going into today's session with earlier this week, prices were trying to be accepted at higher prices. Still too early to say what's going to happen here in this volume profile. If you look in here, you see the volume profiles drop off over here, and we did have volume way up here earlier this week. So just something to keep on watch here. A range right in here would be ideal. It would be great going into today's session if we could manage to hold that going into today. So far this week, the Russell's really not performing too great. So just keep that in mind going forward here. We are below, last week's or that's last monthly value. Our monthly value is being built out a little bit lower here. But we come down in time here, and basically we're just hovering down here on our IWM. I would like to see this actually pushing out here in the pre-market for a bullish continuation pattern. The Qs and the IWM both tagging that on the open for a bullish continuation, and we just do not have those scenarios going here into Friday. So that's why I'm slightly bullish for the tag of the downtrends in some of these indices. I'm just not saying that we're going to have the energy to be pushing out above given the current market environment. Another red flag that I have going on today, this I thought was a bull flag in yesterday's video. This is a risk on the Aussie dollar versus US dollar. When you have a bullish continuation, breakout above the 20 SMA, this is a risk on appetite in the markets. It really looks like that we have a bearish signal in this dead cat bounce on our risk on assets. So just keep that in mind going forward in today's session. That is a bearish take on the markets. Another bearish takeaway possibly here is our crude oil, believe it or not. We are on the midline. This is the bull bear cross scenario for crude oil. So this would typically be an area where the bulls would want to take some profits off the table. So just something to keep in mind here. Yes, if we break out above there on some sort of volume, it's wonderful. But we have 1.5 million shares, and that was earlier. I don't know what it is now, but very, very high volume in the USO going into today's session. So I'm really going to be watching this. This is going to really help drive order flow in the markets today, depending on how things develop here in the crude oil space. And remember, the energy space could squeeze really hard, a short squeeze really hard, if we start seeing some responsive buying, continued responsive buying in the crude oil space. Another thing that I want to be looking for continuation, breakout moves, or relative strength in the markets. The past few days, we have been seeing the semiconductors lagging the Qs. The Qs have been driven up largely by some of the mega tech stocks, but the semiconductors are not driving price and order flow, and that to me is a red flag going into the end of the week here. So do keep that in mind. That purple line right there represents the SMH and how it's been reacting versus the Qs, the comparative chart. The SOX, I did the Qs versus the SOX as well. Virtually similar chart on that scenario too. Now, what's really been driving price, and as you can see, I started with the FANG names: Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and they have been leading the Qs on any type of upward momentum in the markets. So keep that in mind going forward here, that the FANG names have been holding the Qs up. Now, on the same note, we saw how the semiconductors were holding the Qs back. If you just put your Apple and your Microsoft, looky here, they are underperforming the Qs. So whenever you have the biggest of your monsters of text also underperforming on the Qs, that is a warning sign going forward into today's session. So that is something to be very noteworthy going forward today. And then the worst of your monsters of tech, that's your Facebook and Google. Anything with ad revenues really taken on the chin the past few days. And as you can see, your Facebook and Google are dramatically underperforming your Qs. Very noteworthy to realize that if we do have selling pressure in this market, they're likely to lead to the downside. So something to really keep in mind. And just ignore my these translated over off the Qs, but the main thing I've got on here is the comparative charts. Okay, one of the main things I'm looking for here, and that is our XLF to come up and tag this bottom Venom fan line. And this is not the midline, this is the bottom line. But this is kind of a scenario that I'm looking for. I think we were reaching into the close, hoping to open right up here and tag at on the open. But so far this morning, we are selling off a little bit. But this is a theory. That's why I'm thinking early on in the session, we are going to get some sort of responsive bid early on in today's session. And then later today, it might all wash out. So this is my primary thesis, that we might get a morning pop in the markets. So just keep this one on your watch, thinking we are going to tag that and then maybe find responsive selling at that point, because we aren't breaking down below value so far this morning. So that suggests to me that the bulls are still there, not willing to give up on financials quite yet. This is another area I want to talk about with the relative strength in the short squeeze going on in the energy space. I think that's another reason to think that we are going to see a bid up in our high yield bonds as we see a little bit of repair in the XOP and XLE sectors, and they've really been rocked on their debt and that's really been what's been impacting the high yield bonds more than anything, is the impact on the energy sector. So this is something to really keep on watch. That's another one I think it's in range to be tagging, if not, at the very least back testing that in today's session. Here in about 10 minutes, we're gonna have Constellation Brands have their earnings report. So this is going to be quite interesting. This is a Burger King and a lot of the retailers, fast food chain retailers. I think they also own uh, Red Lobster and some of those things. But basically, that we're going to really that sector has been rocked by this, and I think this thing is just going to get rocked to the downside. So wait, let's see how the markets interpret the information coming out here. But it just looks like to me it's just now starting to break for a major correction here in Constellation Brands. That's my gut here. And so that's why I'm not going to say bullish or bearish until I see how the market reacts to. This is one of the core restaurant retailers, and how investors react to the earnings call in this morning's session, because this could really uh, upset the apple cart in the markets and drive us to lower prices starting today. So far in today's session, you can tell that the volumes are relatively light. We don't have any individual stocks per se, very real high volumes. They're really sticking with ETFs, the 24-hour ETFs, but very relatively light volumes this morning, and they're pretty much on a sell. What I did want to point out here, the ones that are standing out are the ones that have been underperforming the markets. They're the ones that are selling out off the hardest. Actually, it looks like we got a little bid in the Boeing this morning, so that is constructive. That wasn't doing that earlier. So actually, Boeing is actually showing a little bit of strength here, and it's one of the higher volumes. I noticed earlier AMD, we were a little bit on a sell signal on AMD. Like I said, the semiconductors have been underperforming this week, so something to not mess around or not realize. And Walt Disney came out this morning. They're laying off 90% of their workforce. And this here, to me, the information that came out from Disney, I just cannot see any reason, anyhow, that can be bullish for the stock. So, I mean, they're getting full payroll for 2 weeks. And then after that, they're going to be using personal leave and something like that. They're, as some people still get paid. But when you're laying off 90% of your workforce, for one corporation, that has got to be very negative for that stock in the long run. So just something to keep in mind going forward in today's session on that. And then some other things, like I said, Facebook is an underperform for the week so far. Already selling increased selling pressure today, so that's something to also take away. And then we have Apple up here, underperformed for the week, and it's leading to the downside as well this morning. So the underperformers seem to be getting weaker on this sell signal in the market this morning. So that's something to keep noteworthy going forward today. Okay, and so far in today's session, almost 3 million shares of USO has been traded. Really nice, solid bid going on here in USO so far this morning. So something to definitely keep on watch. See if they can maintain that bid for USO going forward here. And yeah, look how SPY. Here we are, 7:30 in the morning, and we're not even 500,000 shares traded so far. So something to definitely keep on watch here going forward. Where the money flows are going. It's really all about oil so far this morning, and if they can break above that descending midline on our trend. And the Bulls and the Bears are in a fierce battle here, trying to decide if they can hold prices at these higher levels in the pre-market. Some things that I'm watching closely today, that's Apple. We caught a nice little short squeeze into the close yesterday, and we're back. This is the 200-day moving average, and we're right back at that level this morning. So we want to see how that goes. The past several weeks now, Apple, the last hour of trading or so, they have just dumped it. Like there's big sellers for the end of the week coming into Apple into the end of the week, and with it being this many weeks in, that is something on the bearish side that I'm starting to think that might develop here. Investors are going to be leery of uh, uh, pushing Apple up today, knowing that for the past 3-4 weeks now, Apple has been dumped hard into the close. Like there's big sellers trying to liquidate their positions that have not been able to liquidate during the course of the week. So something to keep in mind going into today's session. That has been a solid trade to short the close on Friday for weeks now, and it may continue again today. So that's why I'm thinking that you're going to really struggle on the upside in the markets today, to especially to try to push out above critical levels. And critical level resistance should be shorted on the markets today, in my opinion, in general. The strongest of the FANG stocks, and that is your Netflix. Basically, my theory on the trade, they brought it right back up into last week's value area on the or the prior day's value area, and I thought we were going to open up in this area or higher for Netflix. So I did take a call position, and so far this morning they're throwing it right back in my face on that call position with the weakness in the markets. Unfortunately, I do have next week's just in case. But my theory on that was that here it was the first week of the month, and I thought we were going to run up to the. If I go out on a monthly chart, let me show you here. I thought Netflix was going to end the week uh, up here near the highs of last month, the 385 area. I thought whenever we went into the close yesterday, seeing where we were closing relative, that there was a decent odds we were going to run up to last month's highs and potentially start next week with a breakout scenario for Netflix. So that's something I do have on watch. This is one of my most bullish scenarios. I'm not really liking how this is, you know, you see where it's trading this morning. It's a really tight range for last month, and we're actually trading below that range already to start the month off with. So I might actually chuck Netflix, considering it didn't do as I expected for the open this morning. So that's one of my trades I do have on here, and I did take ExxonMobil, seeing the relative weakness or relative strength in the markets yesterday. I thought there would be some continuation, and so far this morning we got about a 60 cent bid over the close in ExxonMobil. So my calls there should pay just a little bit this morning with the strength in the crude oil space. So all we really need is continued strength throughout the day, and we'll see a responsive bid in the energy patch, the energy producing patch. Yeah, we just can't have a completely fall out of grace moment with crude right out of the gate this morning. We're up 4.82% on crude this morning. We really need to maintain that going forward here. And as you can see here, crude oil still marking near the highs of the session. We're starting to build out a nice some value up at these higher prices. So something to definitely keep on watch, that we can maintain these prices at these higher levels. I would have been much more constructive if that would have been the highest VPOC of the for yesterday. Kind of looks like to me that they're really trying to. It's getting away from value, in my opinion, for crude oil, developing overnight values. So a little concerned that cannot hold going forward here. So I'll probably be selling my ExxonMobil near the open. So just something to keep in mind going forward. Okay, trades that I've been seeing the past few days. The stocks that have been outperforming on one day, they come into the next day and they underperform on the next. And NVIDIA is a typical case. As I've mentioned, the semiconductors seem to be underperforming the Qs anyway. NVIDIA outperformed yesterday in yesterday's trading session. So this one I have on watch is possibly a fade trade, considering that it outperformed yesterday. and they are dumping the stuff that moves one day and then dumping it into the next. And Abbott Labs is another one. They're seem to be selling it already here. It doesn't really look like a really great trader for me. mRNA, Moderna, another one. Looks like they're dumping it already. Um, Outperform on one day, the next day they tend to be dropping it back down into your face. So something to keep in mind here on Moderna, if that's the case. And if you go out on a longer time frame here, we are at a range high scenario here for Moderna. We found responsive selling at this price level before, and it has tried to poke out before and just found responsive selling at this price point. So that's another one we may want to keep on watch going forward here. That Moderna might, if the markets roll over, that will be one that will be coming back in. And then on the put side, Zoom video, there was news out this morning that SpaceX is banning the use of Zoom video because of privacy concerns. So I don't know if that's going to move the stock, but I did not like I made my money yesterday by trading Zoom calls on the open. I had called that out about it being at the um, um, it was at when I did a video yesterday. It was at the market maker move, expected move for the week, and it just completely crashed down into the open. I got right down here at the bottom here, made some really good money. I cut and run way too early, and boy, that was one heck of a pop in Zoom video. If any of you guys managed to catch that yesterday, and but yeah, I did manage to get the calls in this yesterday morning right out of the gate, and a really nice trade for Zoom. But as you can see, they gave it all right back. So it looks like that the Zoom trade might be dead in the near term. But this is still one of the sectors, it's a growth story. So you do want to be looking to buy the dips, strategically buying the dips on Zoom video. And this is one I actually might, it looks like we're going to be going back over the 200-day moving average, possibly breaking above that today. So I might actually be buying into that again today. So we'll see what happens going forward today. Okay, this is another one. Boeing, they dumped the crap out of it yesterday. Now it looks like they want to have a little bid into it. This represents the 200-day moving average. And, if we start popping above that, which is very possible here, we could get a responsive bid in Boeing this morning. So something to keep in mind, these reversion trades, they dump it one day, they like to rally it the next. This has been working for several days now to be watching the extreme movers under that situation. Now, the one exception is Shopify. They dumped it yesterday. This is not one that I would actually want to take to the long side because I think it is way, way overvalued given the market conditions. If you go out on a weekly chart here, look at this chart, and I think the real support is way down here at the 285 area. This is not a chart that I actually want to take for a bounce trade to the upside, in my opinion, for Shopify. Okay. This basically just gives you a quick rundown of what I'm seeing in the markets. I gave you both sides of the coin, and basically I'm seeing a lot of chop on both sides based on the pre-market action. They're trying to decide which way they want to do it. I'm thinking they're going to dump crude into the open. That's my gut feeling that the crude is not going to be sustainable at the current prices when I'm doing this video. So keep that in mind. That will probably be a dragging force. And I'm also thinking that investors have finally realized, hey, they're dumping the closes on Friday, and they're going to be very hesitant to be pushing prices to the upside here on Friday. So keep that in mind. I will probably be leaning only puts today on my trading, just knowing those scenarios. So if we do get some pops, I'll probably be adding on puts later into the session. Just some little scenarios that I'm thinking about here. So like the video if you like it, and please leave comments below. And thanks a lot for watching my videos.